Lift up your heart and praise. Lift up your hands and praise. Lift up your voice and praise.
And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. The name of the message today is called, Does Your Approach Need Some Alteration? And I want to tell you a story today about a fire that got started. All right? It started inside of this chemical plant, and it was such a very, very large fire that the alarms went off in fire departments for miles around to get all these trucks in here. And after the crews had been fighting the thing for what seemed like hours, the chemical company president approached the fire chief and said, all of our secret formulas are in a vault that's in the center of this plant. They have to be saved, and I'll give $100,000 to the engine company that brings them out safely. The crews tried and tried, but no one could get through. Then, all of a sudden, a truck that was filled with volunteer fire department members, men over 65 years of age, came just barreling down the hill. It was just flying down through there, and it drove straight into the middle of the inferno. The other men watched in disbelief as these older gentlemen got out of their rig, and it was as if they were fighting for their own lives, and they put this fire out, and they extinguished the fire, and they were able to retrieve all of the secrets. The company president walked over to reward these volunteer firefighters, and he says, what do you guys plan to do with the money? And the fire truck driver looked him right in the eyes and answered, well, the first thing we're going to do is fix the brakes on this truck. Now, why is that funny? The reason it's funny is because we all drew a conclusion which was something other than what the truth turned out to be. Right? That's what happened. Part of the reason we laugh at the punchline is because we're sort of amused at ourselves. You know, we're sort of amused at ourselves when we discover that the facts were different from what we presumed. Does anyone here ever draw the wrong conclusion based on what you believe the facts to be? Sure we do. It's only natural because, to a great extent, we're left to formulate our opinions pretty much on what we actually know weighed against our life's experience. Okay? And Yahweh made us that way. Not to make wrong conclusions, but to learn so that we can make good decisions. Do you know what experience is? Experience is what you get when you don't have experience. Think about that one for a minute. Experience is what you get when you don't have experience. But we're designed to evaluate, or in other words, form judgments based on what we know and lessons learned from life experience. Otherwise, we would continue to touch hot things, or fall off of high ledges, or stand behind horses and yell, etc., etc. For the most part, it serves us well. But then come all of the times that we find out that the punchline wasn't funny. All right? When we discover that the facts were different than we presumed. Sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes it is. We're actually warned against this in the Scripture with quite a number of examples. And one of the reasons that there are a good number of examples is because the Scripture is written about Yahweh, yes. but it's also about the stories of human beings. And human beings come to the wrong conclusions too many times. Let's look at some examples. Turn with me to Proverbs chapter 25. And we're going to be reading on page 750 in the 1998 ISR. Proverbs 25 and verse 8. Do not go forth to strive in haste. For what would you do in the end when your neighbor has put you to shame? Plead your case with your neighbor himself, and do not disclose the secret of another, lest he who hears it put you to shame, and your evil report turn not back. Now, why is this in there? Because this is something that we people are prone to do, and we need some instruction about it. Amen? Right. Shlomo points out that there is an added incentive because this type of behavior can come back upon us. And it doesn't feel good when that happens, does it? Right. One problem is that sometimes we can be slow learners and have to get burned more than once. Now, Yahshua's taught ones, we're not beyond jumping to conclusions. So let's take a look at that. Look with me at Luke chapter 13. Luke 13, we're going to start reading verse 1. We're going to be on page 999. Luke 13, verse 1. And some were present at that time, reporting to him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mixed with their offerings. And Yahshua answering said to them, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all other Galileans because they have suffered like this? I say to you, no. But unless you repent, you shall all perish in the same way. Or those 18 on whom the tower in Shiloah fell and killed them, you think they were greater offenders than all other men who dwelt in Jerusalem? I say to you, no. But unless you repent, you shall all perish in the same way. And he spoke this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. And he said to the gardener, look, for 3 years I have come seeking fruit on this fig tree and find none. Cut it down. Why does it even make the ground useless? And he answering said to him, Master, leave it this year too, until I dig around it and throw manure, and if indeed it bears fruit, good. If not so, you shall cut it down. Right. The point of this passage is this. Things are not always as they appear. And sometimes we draw conclusions about other people's righteousness or unrighteousness based on things that we perceive, but things aren't necessarily what we may think them to be. And we also see from this that Yahweh has a plan, and I'm glad that he does. Amen. Another thing that this passage brings to mind for me is, have you ever noticed with some folks, when bad things happen to their enemies, they will say, oh, Yahweh's punishing them. But when bad things happen to themselves, they'll say, oh, the devil is after me. Isn't that interesting? And we don't stop to consider that maybe Yahweh is trying to get my attention because there's something in me that needs to be corrected. Now, let's look at one of the most famous stories about jumping to conclusions and see just how close it came to calamity. Joshua chapter 22. That's where we're going to go. Because one of the things that I want us to think about today is how jumping to conclusions and coming to the wrong conclusion can wind up affecting the relationships with our brothers and sisters who we're supposed to be loving as ourselves. Okay? So, Joshua chapter 22, and we are going to start reading in verse 1. Page 247. Then Yehoshua called to the Reubenites and to the Gadites and half the tribe of Manasseh. Now, you know who these folks are, right? These are the 2.5 tribes that asked to remain on the east side of the Jordan River. But they promised to go in and help Israel to take over the rest of the land. And then come back to their own territory and remain there with their livestock and with their families. Right? That's who Joshua's talking to here. Right? And said to them, You have guarded all that Moshe the servant of Yahweh commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. You have not left your brothers these many days up to this day, but have guarded the charge, the command of Yahweh your Elohim. And now Yahweh your Elohim has given rest to your brothers as he promised them. So now return and go to your tents and to the land of your possession, which Moshe the servant of Yahweh gave you beyond the Jordan. Only diligently guard to do the command in the Torah which Moshe the servant of Yahweh commanded you, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to walk in all his ways, and to guard his commands, and to cling to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your being. And Yehoshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now, it sounds like right here that Joshua's feeling pretty good about his brethren, amen? He's blessing them and thanking them and commending them for being good brothers, so he likes them. Verse 7. And half the tribe of Manasseh, Moshe had given a possession in Bashan, but the other half of it, Yehoshua gave land among their brothers beyond the Jordan westward. So when Yehoshua sent them away to their tents, he also blessed them. And he spoke to them, saying, Return to your tents with great riches, and with very much livestock, and with silver, and with gold, and with bronze, and with iron, and with countless garments. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. So it looks like he likes these guys too. Alright? And the children of Reuben and the children of God and the half of the tribe of Manasseh returned and left the children of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they possessed according to the command of Yahweh by the hand of Moshe. And they came to the districts of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, and the children of Reuben and the children of God and half the tribe of Manasseh. All right, what are those next 3 words? Built an altar there by the Jordan. And what kind of altar was it? A great conspicuous altar. And the children of Israel heard it, said, See, the children of Reuben and the children of God and half the tribe of Manasseh have built an altar opposite the land of Canaan in the districts of the Jordan at the border of the children of Israel. All right? They came to a conclusion based on what they had heard. And when the children of Israel heard, all the congregation of the children of Israel assembled at Shiloh to go to what? Fight against them. So they made a plan to take action on an apparent grievous transgression against Yahweh. They weren't just going to talk about things. They were going to fight. Verse 13. So the children of Israel sent Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, to the children of Reuben and to the children of God, and to half the tribe of Manasseh into the land of Gilead, and 10 rulers with him, 1 ruler each from the chief houses of every tribe of Israel, and each one was the head of the house of his father among the divisions of Israel. And they came to the children of Reuben and to the children of God and to half the tribe of Manasseh to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, so they're fixing to lay it out why they're here. Thus says all the congregation of Yahweh, That sounds like whatever's going on, everyone's in one accord, right? What is this trespass you have committed against the Elohim of Israel to turn away from this day from following Yahweh, and that you have built yourselves an altar to rebel against Yahweh this day? Is the crookedness of Peor not enough for us, from which we have not been cleansed all this day, although there was a plague in the congregation of Yahweh, that you turn away today from following Yahweh? And it shall be, if you rebel today against Yahweh, that tomorrow he is wroth with all the congregation of Israel. And indeed, if the land of your possession is unclean, then pass over to the land of the possession of Yahweh, where the dwelling place of Yahweh dwells, and take possession among us. But do not rebel against Yahweh, nor rebel against us by building yourselves an altar besides the altar of Yahweh our Elohim. Did not Achan the son of Zerach commit a trespass in that which is under the ban, and wrath fell on the congregation of Israel? And he was not the only one to die in his crookedness. Then the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and half the tribe of Manasseh answered and said to the heads of the divisions of Israel. In other words, hold on just a minute, fellas. You need to hear the rest of the story. Verse 22. El Elohim Yahweh, El Elohim Yahweh. He knows, and let Yisrael itself know, if this has been in rebellion, or if in trespass against Yahweh, do not save us this day. If we have built ourselves an altar to turn from following Yahweh, or if to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings on it, or to make peace offerings on it, let Yahweh himself require it. But truly, from fear, for a reason we did this, saying, in time to come your sons might speak to our sons, saying, what have you to do with Yahweh, Elohim of Yisrael? For Yahweh has made the yard and the border between you and us, you children of Reuben and children of God. You have no portion with Yahweh. So your sons would make our sons stop fearing Yahweh. So we said, let us now prepare to build ourselves an altar, not for burnt offerings, nor for slaughtering, but to be a witness between you and us and our generations after us, to do the service of Yahweh before him with our burnt offerings and with our slaughterings and with our peace offerings. That your sons should not say to our sons in time to come, you have no portion with Yahweh. So we said that it shall be when they say this to us or to our generations in time to come, that we shall say, see the pattern of the altar of Yahweh which our fathers made, though not for burnt offerings, nor for slaughterings, but it is a witness between you and us. Far be it from us to rebel against Yahweh, and to turn from following Yahweh this day, to build an altar for burnt offerings, for grain offerings, or for slaughterings, besides the altar of Yahweh our Elohim, which is before his dwelling place. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? These fellows here had left their families and their livestock and all of their possessions and the things that they loved, and went to fight with their brethren. Right? And not go back home, not even go back home until everyone else had received their inheritance. And then, when they come back, before anyone ever even asks. That's a little awkward over there. It's kind of conspicuous if you ask me. What's up with that? The whole congregation of Yahweh has been whipped up into such a frenzy that they're going over there to fight. Never even asked. After all the things that these 2.5 tribes had done for them. Verse 30. And Pentecost, the priests and the rulers of the congregation and the heads of the thousands of Israel who were with him heard the words of the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children of Manasseh spoke, and it was good in their eyes. And Pentecost, the son of Eleazar, the priest, said to the children of Reuben and to the children of Gad and to the children of Manasseh, today we know that Yahweh is in our midst, because you have not committed against Yahweh this trespass. Now, you have delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of Yahweh. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, and the rulers returned from the children of Rehoboam and the children of God from the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan to the children of Israel, and brought back word to them. So the matter was good in the eyes of the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed Elohim, and they spoke no more of going against to fight to destroy the land where the children of Rehoboam and God dwelt. And the children of Rehoboam and the children of God called the altar a witness between us that Yahweh is Elohim. See, these folks were righteous, and the only reason they did this was to be righteous still. Right? So that they would not lose the connection with their brethren. But the brethren jumped to conclusions. And that's why I named this message, Does Your Approach Need Some Alteration? And I spelled it Altar. Altar-ation. The rest of Israel was about to deploy a scorched earth policy on their brothers, and their brothers only wanted to make sure that they would always be brothers. How about that? Do you think that we might benefit from this story when we hear a matter? Yeah, perhaps we would. I figure that if it could happen to a whole congregation of Yahweh, it could happen also to one guy or gal. Proverbs 18. We're going to start reading verse 12 on page 743. And we need to remember this because we oftentimes get proud when we get offended. Proverbs 18:12. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before esteem is humility. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. That's pretty strong. How many of us have ever answered a matter before we heard it? Okay, 3 of us have. How many of us have ever answered a matter before we heard it? Okay, that's 7 of us now. Turn with me to John chapter 7. John chapter 7, we're going to start reading in verse 20. Page 1027. Talking to Yeshua here. And the crowd answered and said, You have a demon who seeks to kill you. See, he'd healed a man on the Sabbath. That's what the big offense was. And Yeshua answered and said to them, I did one work, and you all marvel. Because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, are you wroth with me because I made a man entirely well on the Sabbath? Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Did you know that sometimes that means you've got to get more of the facts? Verse 25. Therefore, some of them from Jerusalem said, Is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? And see, he speaks boldly, and they say none at all to him. Could it be the rulers truly know that this is truly the Messiah? So, let's look at another example of someone coming to the wrong conclusion. And this one was a prophet of Yahweh. Matter of fact, he made several. 1 Samuel chapter 16. He makes several. Sequential. 1 Samuel 16, we're going to start reading in verse 4. And we're going to start reading verse 4. And Shemuel did what Yahweh said and went to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming and said, "Do you come in peace?" And he said, "In peace. I have come to slaughter to Yahweh. Set yourselves apart, and you shall come with me to the slaughtering." And he set Yeshai and his sons apart and invited them to the slaughtering. And it came to be, when they came, that he saw Eliab and thought, "The anointed of Yahweh is indeed before him." See, this is where Shemuel is coming to anoint a new king over Yisrael. That's what's going on here. But Yahweh said to Shemuel, "Do not look at his appearance or his height or his stature, because I have refused him. For not as man sees, for man looks at the eyes, but Yahweh looks at the heart." Okay, so the prophet of Yahweh jumped to wrong conclusion here, that Eliab was the one, but Yahweh said no. Right? Then, verse 8, Yeshai called Abinadab and made him pass before Shemuel. And he said, "Neither has Yahweh chosen this one." And next Yeshai made Shammah pass by. And he said, "Neither has Yahweh chosen this one." And Yeshai made 7 of his sons pass before Shemuel. And Shemuel said to Yeshai, "Yahweh has not chosen these." And Shemuel said to Yeshai, "Are these all the young men?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and see, he is tending the sheep." And Shemuel said to Yeshai, "Send and bring him, for we do not turn around till he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. And he was ruddy, with bright eyes, and good looking. And Yahweh said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." And Shemuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of Yahweh came upon David from that day and onwards. And Shemuel arose and went to Ramah. So you see, even the prophet of Elohim can jump to conclusions. So we don't need to be too hard on ourselves when we do that, but we need to be very diligent in our efforts to avoid that. This next one that we're going to look at here is about Paul. We're going to read a good portion of Acts 21 and Acts 22, and we're going to read about a lot of people jumping to wrong conclusions. So let's look at Acts 21. We're going to be on page, we're going to start reading verse 18, be on page 1076. Acts 21 and verse 18. And on the following day, Shaul went in with us to Yaakov, that would be James. And all the elders came. And having greeted them, he was relating one by one what Elohim had done among the Gentiles through his service. And when they heard it, they praised the master. And they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Yehudim there are who have believed, and all of them are ardent for the Torah." Now, did you notice what that said? All of these Yehudim who have believed. What are the taught ones trying to get the people to believe in? Yeshua. Right? Right? All of these believers in Yeshua are ardent for the Torah. Verse 21. And they have been informed about you that you teach all the Yehudim who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moshe, saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come, so do this, what we say to you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expenses so that they shave their heads, and all shall know what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. You see what's going on here? Everyone has this impression that Paul was teaching not to circumcise and not to keep the Torah of Moshe. And they were upset about this. And Yaakov and the other elders told Paul that you need to go and do a temple service. And you need to go and do this to show everyone that what they have heard about you is not so. These people had come to a conclusion without hearing a matter. They just heard about a matter. All right? Verse 25. But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and declared that they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols and blood and what is strangled and whoring. Then Shaul took the men on the next day. He did not waste any time. And having been cleansed with them, you mean he submitted to a purification process? Huh? I thought Yahshua did away with all of that. Not. Went into the set-apart place to announce the completion of the days of separation until the offering should be presented for each one of them. And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Yehudim, that would be the Jews, the Yehudim from Asia, seeing him in the set-apart place, were stirring up all the crowd, and they laid hands on him, crying out, Men of Yisrael, help! This is the man who is teaching all men everywhere. Right, those are absolutes. All men everywhere against the people and the Torah and this place. And besides, he also brought Greeks into the set-apart place and has profaned this set-apart place because they had previously seen Trophimus, the Ephesian, with him in the city. And they jumped to conclusion. It says, whom they thought Shaul, see that? They thought Shaul had brought into the set-apart place. They jumped to a conclusion and they made charges based on that conclusion that they had come to. And the entire city was moved. And the people rushed together and seized Paul and dragged him out of the set-apart place, and immediately the doors were shut. And while they were seeking to kill him, a report came to the commander of the company of soldiers that all Jerusalem was in confusion. At once he took soldiers and captains and ran down to them, and they, having seen the commander and the soldiers, stopped beating Shaul. And when the commander came near and took him and commanded him to be bound with 2 chains, and was asking who he was and what he had done. And in the crowd some were shouting this, and others shouted that. And not being able to ascertain the truth because of the uproar, he commanded him to be taken into the barracks. And when he came to the stairs, he had to be carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. For a large number of the people followed after, crying out, Away with him! And as Shaul was about to be led to the barracks, he said to the commander, Am I allowed to say somewhat to you? And he said, Do you know Greek? Now, just a side note. If the commander was surprised that Shaul could speak Greek, it probably means that the other people that were in the crowd weren't speaking Greek to the commander. All right? When they answered him about what Shaul had done. And they said this and some said that. All right? And for those who think that the people all spoke Greek in Judah in those days, well, that's kind of a point to be taken here. Verse 38. Are you not the Mitzrite who some time ago stirred up a revolt and led the 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness? But Shaul replied, I am a Yehudi from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city. See, this commander has jumped to a conclusion, has he not? Right? He thought he was Mitzrite. He thought he'd led some assassins into the wilderness. And now he finds out that he's a Yehudi from Tarsus in Cilicia. And I beg you, allow me to speak to the people. And having given him permission, Shaul, standing on the stairs, motioned with his hands to the people. And when there was a great silence, he spoke to them in the Hebrew language, saying, chapter 22, verse 1. Men, brothers, and fathers, hear my defense before you now. And when they heard that he spoke to them in the Hebrew language, they kept greater silence. And he said, I am indeed a Yehudi, having been born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, having been instructed according to the exactness of the Torah of our fathers, being ardent for Elohim as you all are today, who persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering up into prison both men and women, as also the high priest bears me witness, and all the eldership, from whom I also received letters to the brothers, and went to Damascus to bring in chains even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished. And it came to be, as I was journeying and coming near Damascus, about noon, suddenly a great light shone around me out of the heaven. And I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Shaul, Shaul, why do you persecute me? And I answered, who are you, Master? And he said to me, I am Yahshua of Nazareth, whom you persecute. And those who were with me indeed saw the light and were afraid, but they did not hear his voice speaking to me. And I said, what shall I do, Master? And the Master said to me, rise up, go into Damascus, and there you shall be told all that you have been appointed to do. And as I couldn't see because of the esteem of the light, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came into Damascus. And a certain Hananiah, a dedicated man according to the, what's that next word? Torah, being well spoken of by all the Yehudim dwelling there, came to me and stood by and said to me, Brother Shaul, look up. And at that same hour I looked up at him, and he said, the Elohim of our fathers has appointed you to know his desire and to see the righteous one, and to hear the voice from his mouth. Because you shall be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. And now, why do you delay? Rise up and be immersed and wash away your sins, calling on the name of Yahweh. Now, isn't it interesting that it points out that this Yehudi to whom Yahshua is sending Shaul, Yahshua is sending Shaul to learn the way, is a dedicated man according to the Torah. Isn't that interesting? See, there were a lot of people who would jump to the conclusion that Yahshua did away with the Torah, with the law. Verse 17. And it came to be when I returned to Jerusalem and while I was praying in the set-apart place, I came to be in a trance, and I saw him saying to me, hurry and get out of Jerusalem speedily, because they shall not accept your witness concerning me. And I said, Master, they know that in every congregation I was imprisoning and beating those who believe in you. And when the blood of your witness Stephanos was shed, I also was standing by, giving my approval to his death, and keeping the garments of those who were killing him. And he said to me, go, because I shall send you far from here to the Gentiles. And they were listening to him until this word. And then they lifted up their voice, saying, away with such a one from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. And they were shouting and tearing their garments and throwing dust into the air. The commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks and said that he should be examined by flogging in order to find out why they were so against him. And they were stretching him out with straps. Shaul said to the captain who was standing by, is it permitted for you to whip a man who is a Roman and uncondemned? So the commander jumped to another conclusion here. He jumped to the conclusion that this was just a regular old Jew that he could type and beat and interrogate any way he wanted to. Verse 26. And when the captain heard, he went and reported to the commander, saying, watch what you are about to do, for this man is a Roman. And having come, the commander said to him, say to me, are you a Roman? And he said, yes. And the commander answered, With a large sum I obtained this citizenship. And Shaul said, but I was even born so. Then at once those who were about to examine him withdrew from him. And the commander was also afraid after he found out that he was a Roman, and because he had bound him. And on the next day, intending to know for certain why he was accused by the Yehudim, he released him and commanded the chief priests and all the council to come, and brought Shaul down and set him before them. So, as we go through these different passages here, there are a lot more. There are a lot more that we could look at. But we see plenty of opportunities for people to come to wrong conclusions. Amen? All right. Things that are hurtful and deadly. They can involve character assassination. They can wind up having a bad end and do great harm. So what are we to do? Well, there are several things. One, we need to get all the facts. Another thing that we need to do is we need to be ready to forgive when things turn out differently than we thought. You see, there are some people who don't want you to confuse them with the facts. They're mad, and they are going to stay mad. You ever seen that? Mad, and I'm going to stay mad. We also need to be willing to forgive others when they do the same thing to us that we're susceptible to doing ourselves. There's this old song, depending on how old you are, whether or not you know which one it is, that says, lessons learned are like bridges burned. You only need to cross them but once. Is the knowledge gained worth the price of the pain, or the spoils worth the cost of the hunt? There's a lot of wisdom in that. Learning from our bad choices that we make so that we don't have to do them over and over. And there's something else. You know, I mentioned earlier about learning from our own life's experiences. You can watch someone else stick their finger in the electrical outlet and decide, you know, I just don't believe I will do that. You don't have to do that yourself. There are plenty of opportunities to learn from other people's bad choices and mistakes. Amen? Not to condemnation, but to wisdom. Yes, we will likely learn these things again and again, but we don't have to. Now, see, this is one of these messages that I need to hear for me. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. Second Corinthians chapter 10, we're going to start reading in verse 3. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not fight according to the flesh. For the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but mighty in Elohim, for overthrowing strongholds, overthrowing, what's that next word? Reasonings. And every high matter that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim, taking captive every thought to make it obedient to Messiah, and being ready to punish all disobedience when our obedience is complete. Wow. Taking captive every thought and make it obedient to Messiah. I wish I did that with every thought. There's too many real life opportunities that I've got for it to come out of my mouth if I didn't take it captive in my head. We can work at taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Messiah, and we should. Our last passage today is James chapter 1. Page 1174. James chapter 4, we're going to start reading in verse 19. So then, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. That's one of them that needs to sink in. For the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. So, go back to the title of this message. Does your approach need some alterations? Mine does. Perhaps if we will remember the altar that the tribes east of the Jordan put up, we can think to seek first to understand before we react, amen? Right? And get the brakes fixed on that truck before we find ourselves in the middle of the fire. Yahweh Yahweh Ba'ishmareka Ya'er Yahweh Panabaleka Bikaneka Yasai Yahweh Panabaleka Biasim Lakash Shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.